This short video lecture is a continuation on the topic of chemicals and the environment and human health. I've been sharing with you different websites that you can utilize to find out information about chemicals being released into the environment in the community in which you live in. I've also shared websites with you in which you can actually look up detailed information about companies or facilities within the vicinity of where you live and find out whether they're in compliance or non-compliance. A couple more websites that I feel are very important for you to be familiar with and exposed to are listed on the screen in front of you. They include the Cleanups in My Community website, or the CIMC. This website allows you to map and list hazardous waste cleanup locations and find out details about those cleanups. The second one on your screen is the Community Focused Exposure and Risk Screening Tool, or C-FIRST. This website builds upon other community-focused guidance and tools to help identify human exposure and potential risks for community in relation to chemicals that are being stored or disposed of or potentially released into the environment. So this tool is used to help local planners improve public health. And then two websites that I always find useful is the EPA Environmental Atlas, which is an interactive map that allows you to hone in on specific interests that you may have pertaining to the amount of arsenic in groundwater across the United States, the location of all the Superfund sites across the United States, location of nuclear power plants across the United States or within Pennsylvania. And you can do this at a national level or zoom in to a state level and even to a local level. So this is a really cool interactive mapping website. And the last one on this list is EPA My Environment. And I will show you an example of this, and it allows you to just type in your zip code or the name of your town, and it will give you detailed reports about the air quality, the water quality, the demographics of the region in terms of income making levels as well as cultural diversity. It'll also share information about local watersheds and waste disposal activities and so on. So this too is a really helpful website as well. This is the Cleanups in My Community website that's funded and made available through the Environmental Protection Agency. And you can look at the data in a map format for the entire nation or for your state or territory or for a specific geographic area at a local level. And you can specify what you want to see, whether it be brownfield cleanup sites of old industrial facilities or perhaps Superfund sites located in your area where you live. So you can look at it in map view, or you can actually click on the maps in specific areas and get the data associated with that. So I'm going to scroll down here and recognize that there's a list of national maps that we can look at for brownfield properties or Superfund sites or RCRA corrective actions. Now, you may not be familiar with what these sites entail, but I will let you know that a brownfield property is an old industrial site that was maybe abandoned and an eyesore to the community, and an entity was interested in cleaning up the site, so they received a grant with free money that they could match, and they investigated the facility to determine what the environmental risks were to the community, and then they cleaned up the facility and basically turned it into something that was viable for future use within the community. So basically, brownfields takes old, dilapidated, and potentially contaminated sites that have been abandoned and cleans them up and converts them into useful, viable sites for the community. And it helps bring back economic development into areas of cities which are economically deprived and dilapidated. Superfund sites are those sites that are recognized under the CERCLA law as posing a direct risk to the human health in the community and the environment. And these sites have been ranked nationally and put on a list which prioritizes them in terms of the need for cleaning them up. So that's a Superfund site. RCRA corrective action sites are facilities that are involved with the transportation and the storage and the disposal of waste, and those facilities have had some kind of a corrective action placed upon them that they needed to fix because they weren't in compliance. So what I've done is I've mapped each of these three, and this first map that I'm going to show you basically is a map of the United States and all of the facilities located across the United States. So the legend is on the right hand side, and basically all these symbols indicate the location of what's listed next to them respectively. So the orange dots are brownfield properties, which are industrial sites that have been cleaned up. The blue sites are federal facilities that are recognized and report to the government regarding any kind of environmental releases into the environment. The yellow triangles are incidences of national significance, and we can look at those a little bit later. The green squares that are not filled in are federal facilities, or basically landfills or waste storage, transport, disposal facilities. And green squares that are colored in are those same facilities that have had some kind of corrective action occur. And then the asterisk with the red is considered to be a Superfund federal facility, meaning it's associated with the federal government, and then Superfund National Priority List sites may or may not be associated with the government operations. The little dot for purple dot is for environmental responses, and there's a couple over in these areas where there was a need for an environmental response. Maybe it was an accidental spill of a chemical or something like that. So what I've done is I've zoomed in on that national map to the state of Pennsylvania, so you can see what these facilities look like from a distribution standpoint across the state of Pennsylvania. Notice we do have an incident of national significance that occurred in Pennsylvania over by Pittsburgh, so I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to look for the symbol to show up as I scroll down through these events, and it's called the Floref Pennsylvania Oil Spill Response. So I can actually click on this, and it's going to give me information about what happened. This event actually happened in 1988, and a 4 million gallon oil storage tank owned by Ashland Oil Company split apart and collapsed at an oil storage facility in Floref, Pennsylvania, near the Monongahela River. The split released diesel oil over the tank's containment dikes and across a parking lot onto an adjacent property and into an uncapped storm drain that emptied directly into the Monongahela River. So within minutes, this oil slick of diesel moved down the river and washed over 2 dams and dispersed throughout the river. And it was then carried into the Ohio River. And then there's more details about that event and what happened in regards to the cleanup. So it's pretty cool that we can just go to this map and click on a dot and get a lot more information about it. So let's take a look at a federal facility docket. There's a blue dot right here. Let's click on this. It's related to the Fort Indiantown Gap, and it's pertaining to a Superfund project regarding environmental contamination risk concern to the community. So it looks like these are decisions that have been made pertaining to the status of Superfund for Fort Indiantown Gap location. And it was recorded in the federal facilities docket. Let's look at a brownfield property. See if we can find one that's easy to click on. Try this one up here in Pennsylvania. This is Renova Industrial Park, and what we can do is click on the information about Renova Industrial Park, and it'll pull up the database that will provide us with details about what was done at this property, what were the chemicals of concern, what were the cleanup activities, and what's the current status of this property. So that's pretty cool that you can just point, click, and get a lot of information about what's going on in different areas of Pennsylvania. So that's a site that was actually an old industrial site that was cleaned up and made viable for economic use again. So let's take a look at maybe a RCRA facility that had corrective action occur. Let's go over here towards Pittsburgh. And it looks like it's a trailer company corporation, and they had some kind of enforcement corrective action that occurred. And again, you can click on it and you can find out details pertaining to the incident and what happened just by scrolling through the information provided. Looks like the solution for cleanup was selected in 2014, and the site was cleaned up that year, and the cleanup is considered complete. and you can actually click on the report to read specifically what happened at that facility. It also gives you current status and that the human exposure to contamination at the site is considered to be under control, and the migration of contaminated water at this site is considered to be under control as well. So we'll click out of that, and that was a RCRA facility. Let's click on a Superfund facility and see what kind of information we can get. So I'm going to scroll down until it comes up. Middletown Airfield Site. This is actually next to the Harrisburg International Airport, or was formerly known as the Middletown Airfield site, Middletown. And it will give you information about the location of this site, what's the current status of the site, any kind of cleanups that were done, and whether or not there's any continued risk associated with the site. So you can get more details about it. So again, it is really cool that we can just simply point and click through an interactive map to find out more details about what has happened with various environmental facilities in our community and our neighborhood. You can also manipulate the data to only show one of these key items in the legend. So what I've done is I've created a map that displays all the brownfield properties that have been investigated and cleaned up across the United States. Now I'm going to zoom into Pennsylvania. This is a zoomed in version to show the state of Pennsylvania and surrounding states in regards to the location and distribution of brownfield sites that have been cleaned up. Notice that there's a higher density of brownfield sites that have been cleaned up in New Jersey, as well as in many of these New England states and around the Great Lakes regions as compared to here in Pennsylvania. Although we do have a cluster of brownfields that have been cleaned up and turned into economically viable properties around the Pittsburgh region. So I zoomed in on Harrisburg, Pennsylvania and mapped the brownfields associated with this region, and I changed the imagery to show me an aerial photo. I could also change the imagery to not include that and instead use like a U.S. National Geographic topo map instead, so I can see where the river is and everything. I can actually click on these dots for the brownfields and it will provide me information about the cleanup that was conducted and more specific details about the contaminants of concern that were removed and what the current status is for this facility. So again, it's great that this information is just at your fingertips. Again, using this website, I've created a map which depicts the Superfund National Priority List sites located across the United States. And as we zoom in, and it remaps and reconfigures, notice that there's a large cluster of Superfund sites here along the East Coast compared to anywhere else in the United States. So we're going to continue to zoom in on those more and more to see a better view of where these Superfund sites are listed. You will learn more about Superfund sites in the waste management section of this course, but Pennsylvania is actually ranked third in the nation with having the most number of Superfund sites. I think it's evident that New Jersey is probably ranked higher than Pennsylvania. Notice there's a whole bunch located right here in a linear feature, and that's because this is a very commercialized region along the Delaware River that flows between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Each of these dots represent a location at which activities occurred in the past that released chemicals into the land, water, or air that pose a risk to public health. As a result, they've been inventoried and they've been listed on the National Priority List for cleanup. So taking you back to the actual website, Cleanups in My Community, another approach that you can take is simply by typing in your zip code, and they will map the various facilities surrounding your zip code, and you can identify exactly what you want them to map. So for example, I've clicked on layers and asked it to map the toxic release inventory sites near my home that I live, and to put all these purple triangles on the site. Again, it's a good resource tool for you to find out what's in your community.